again to make sure that I am not misunderstood. One, I am hearing evidence in relation to law enforcement agencies in regard to which there is a suggestion that powers were being abused in regard to the arrest and prosecution of officers who were investigating corruption matters, and that they were being suspended and there were transfers that appear not to have been motivated by proper reasons, but may have been connected with corruption or harassing people who were doing their job. And in regard to Colonel Madu, I've had evidence that suggests that he may be guilty of corruption, that he may have been guilty of bribery or attempted bribery. And I've heard that it appears that not much has been done over many years in regard to the allegations against him relating to bribery. And that includes in terms of internal disciplinary matters within SABC. So if not much has been done over so many years, that would be a matter of grave concern. But I'm not at this stage, or I'm not the person at this stage to say whether he should or should not be there at work. Somebody within SABC is supposed to look into the matter and take such decisions as are dictated by the law and the policies of SABC. Whether somebody has already looked into the matter and came to a decision that nothing should be done, I don't know. But I would like to know whether anything has been done, and if so, what it is. Therefore, I would like these concerns, this issue, to be brought to senior authorities within SABC, because it's important to find out whether they know about the matter and they know whether anything has been done, and if nothing has been done, why nothing has been done. They can look into the matter. But as a commission, we would definitely like to have full information as well, because there is a suggestion in the evidence that as part of what was happening during the relevant time is that those officers who were doing their job in terms of investigating corruption cases were being victimized, and other people were not being dealt with even when there was a reason for them to be dealt with. So we would like to look into that. So the legal team and the secretary of the commission should communicate with the senior management of SABC to establish whether, particularly one, I think they could go to the national commissioner, because he would be the one that would know who in the hierarchy is supposed to have dealt with the matter and whether he's aware of it, and would be able to cause information to be made available as to what has happened. So no judgment has been made as to whether Colonel Madu should or should not be at work. I've not heard Colonel Madu's side of the story. So the idea was certainly not that I have made any decision about whether or not he should be there. What's important is to find out whether these allegations are known to SABC, what they have done about them, if anything, and if they've not done anything, why they have not done anything, and then the matter can be taken from there. All people will be given a fair hearing by the Commission, no matter how serious the allegations against them are, and their side of the story will be heard and considered properly and fairly, and nobody will be presumed to be guilty of anything just because a witness has said he or she did something. Findings will be made at the end of the work of the Commission. So everybody will be given a fair hearing, no matter what has been said about them or against them. That's the one thing I wanted to say. The second thing I want to say is this. Major General Booysen, from the evidence that he has given, has indicated that there are a number of court applications that he had to do. He had to bring to court to deal with various matters. In some of them, there are judgments. I would like the legal team to secure not only the judgments in regard to those matters, but I would like the full set of papers in each application so that we can have a full picture of exactly what happened in regard to each matter and how people against whom certain allegations were made, how they responded in affidavits that were placed before the courts. I would also like to see the findings that were made by those courts in regard to each matter. And in this regard, I would like the legal team to prepare for me for later use a list of all findings that have been made by the courts in the various applications where there is no appeal pending. Maybe they can make them even if there is an appeal pending, but a note can be made that in regard to that one, specific ones, there is an appeal pending. Mr. McBride also gave evidence and indicated that he had to go to court a few times where he brought applications. I would like the same in regard to him. And in regard to him, I think I may have already said this when he was giving evidence. It's important to obtain documentation that was before the prosecutor who made the decision to prosecute, and the information that was before the prosecutor when the charges were withdrawn, the criminal charges were withdrawn. I want to know all of that. Thank you.
Noted, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we may proceed.
Chair, I am informed that there are legal representatives at this venue who have not placed themselves on record as yet. With your indulgence.
Yes, let them place themselves on record
Thank you.
if there are those who wish to do so.
Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Yusuf Bir from the Johannesburg Bar. I appear on behalf of Minister Natim Tetwa to observe the current witnesses' evidence. I'm instructed by Mabuza attorneys, and the lead counsel is Mr. Ndukai Toby, who is not present here but is part of the team. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, let's proceed.
Chair, to firstly address some of the queries that you raised yesterday for attention.
Yes.
Would you grant me the indulgence to deal with those now?
That's fine. Yes, let's deal with them now.
Okay. Just one administrative or housekeeping issue. All the exhibits that were handed up yesterday, which starts at Exhibit ZH, IJKL, have been consolidated into a blue folder.
Okay.
There's one additional exhibit that has been added,
Yes.
and it's been marked ZM to follow the sequence.
Yes.
And that particular exhibit is the case that Chair requested yesterday.
Yes.
In relation to who took the decision
It's a
to
judgment.
withdraw. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Judge.
Okay, so that particular exhibit then will be marked Exhibit ZM, M in brackets.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if I could just direct you to the relevant paragraphs of that case. The first paragraph is paragraph 53, which is on page 50. 50.
Yes.
And to read into the record, 53 reads, this court is of the view that the ground of opposition premised on the alleged failure to exhaust internal remedies is misplaced. Firstly, the facts indicate that it was not Mogatle and rather Abrams who took the decision to withdraw the charges preferred against Jiba.
Oh, that's the one where Major General Booysen was saying 3 judges made a finding specifically that Mr. Abrams was the one who had made the decision, despite the fact that he had deposed to an affidavit saying he was not the one who made the decision.
Correct, Chair.
Thank you.
The next relevant paragraph, it's at page 52 of the same bundle.
I'm sorry, do we know whether this is on appeal or not? You don't know?
I don't believe
so
it is.
you can check later on.
Yes.
You can check later on, okay.
So the next relevant paragraph, which is still part of the majority judgment, is at page 52, and it's paragraph 59.
Yes.
It reads, having regard to what is stated above, it is the finding of this court that firstly, the decision to withdraw charges against Jiba was taken by Abrams on recommendation by Mogatle.
Yes.
Secondly, the reasons advanced for the withdrawal of charges against Jiba are based on the material error of law which falls short of the legality expected in a rational decision. And
Yes.
thirdly, the defense that freedom under law has not exhausted the internal remedies by seeking a review of the decision to prosecute has no merit.
Yes.
The last paragraph, which is of relevance too, is part of the dissenting judgment,
Yes.
which Chair can find on page 80 at paragraph 43.
Yes.
And with your leave, if I may read. It's under the heading, the decision to withdraw against Ms. Jiba. Both Mr. Abrams and Mr. Mokatle say in their affidavits that it was Mr. Mokatle and not Mr. Abrams who took the decision. Mr. Abrams, with the wording of Section 22(2)(c) of the NPA Act in mind, says that he did not take the decision for the very reason that after Mr. Mokatle had taken the decision, he, Mr. Abrams, would be able to review the decision of Mr. Mokatle. Mr. Abrams does not say what he would have done had Mr. Mokatle been in favor of continuing the prosecution of Ms. Jiba. Mr. Abrams was not bound by the view of Mr. Mokatle. Mr. Abrams could, had he so determined, continued with the prosecution. What Mr. Mokatle had sent to Mr. Abrams was merely a recommendation rather than a decision. Section 22, subsection 2(c) does not provide for the review of a recommendation. In my view, the decision was taken by Mr. Abrams. I make no adverse credibility finding against either Mr. Abrams or Mr. Mokatle. I simply prefer my interpretation of the facts and the law to theirs. This finding makes it unnecessary for me to consider the lack of authority to delegate. Point.
Yes. Do you know whether the majority says anything along the lines that they are not making any credibility finding as well in the majority judgment, or is that something you are not sure about?
I do not specifically recall that, but I'm happy to double check and revert.
Yes.
Chair, sorry for interruption.
Yes. Yes.
There are credibility.
You would know this judgment quite well.
Exactly, Chair.
Yes.
And paragraphs 55 to 58. There are credibility findings against both Advocate Sean Abrams and Advocate Marshall Mokatle.
Yes, that's paragraphs 55 to 58.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you very much.
In the majority judgment, Chair.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Thank you, General.
And do you know whether it's on appeal?
Chair, I think
how long ago was it, maybe first?
Yeah, I'll have to check, but I do recall, Chair, that there was an appeal by the NPA and also by, I think, Advocate Abrams. I'm not too sure
how far that process
one of the
is.
parties withdrew, but I think there could be an appeal still pending.
Oh, okay. Okay, no, thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Well, unfortunately, I was looking, I was trying to see when judgment was handed down, when the judgment was handed down. Unfortunately, the only date given there is the date when, well, there is 30 and 31 October 2017 as the dates when the matter was heard. And then at the top of page 32, there is a date for the revision of the judgment being 21 December 2017. So, so it would have been handed down sometime towards the end of 2017.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
According to my research, this was specifically on the 12th, well, it referenced the date of the 12th of December 2017, but it's certainly not reflected in here, so I stand to be corrected.
Okay, all right. I think maybe the legal team should just check whether there's still an appeal pending in regard to the matter.
If that disposes of that query, the next query relates to the appointments. The National Prosecuting Authority.
That is what appointment, that one?
Chair, a query was raised yesterday as to who is authorized
or to appoint an acting DPP.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, yeah.
I have a copy of the National Prosecuting Authority Act, should you so wish, but I'm happy to just...
If you just tell me what it says, that's enough.
Chapter 3 in particular deals with the appointments of various members within the NDP, within the Prosecuting Authority. And in relation to the appointment of deputy directors, it says that the minister may apologies, it's section 15 of the Act. It says that the minister may, subject to the laws governing the public service in section 16(4), and after consultation with the national director, appoint a deputy director of public prosecutions.
Wouldn't that be a national person as opposed to a provincial DPP? I'm not sure, the structure of the NPA can be confusing. So we are looking for who has the power to appoint an acting provincial DPP, and I don't even think it's called provincial DPP. It's the provincial representative of the NTPP.
Chair, if I may, there are essentially, this particular Act governs the appointment of four positions.
Yes.
The first is the National Director.
Yeah.
That's under Section 10.
Yes.
The second is the Deputy National Director.
Yes.
Which is Section 11.
Yeah.
The third is the appointment of directors and acting directors.
Yes.
That's Section 13. Section 15,
and who does it say? That's where it says the minister.
For the appointment of directors and acting directors, the President, after consultation with the Minister and the National Director, may appoint a Director of Public Prosecutions in respect of the Office of the Prosecuting Authority.
Oh, okay. All right.
And the last deals with the appointment of prosecutors generally at Section 16.
Okay, no, thank you. But isn't that a little strange? A provision that you read earlier on said the minister may appoint, and I thought you were talking about a deputy director?
That was the deputy director, Chair, whereas the appointment of directors and acting directors
is the president.
Is the president.
Oh, okay.
The last query that we were able to deal with relates to...
So, Advocate Noko would have therefore have been appointed by the president in terms of that?
My understanding is so.
Yes. Okay, all right. And later on you can just check and we can correct whatever we have said if we have misunderstood who appoints who. That's fine.
If I could just then summarize, a national director, a deputy national director, and directors and acting directors are all appointed by the president.
Yes.
Be it independently or in consultation with the minister and other stakeholders.
Okay.
The next query that was raised relates to the interview of Advocate Noko.
Yes.
Thankfully, we were able to extract the relevant excerpt of the interview.
Yes.
Which relates to her responses on the Booysen matter.
Yes.
It is in fact ready and available to be viewed, should you so wish.
No, we don't need to view it, as if we've got transcripts that would be enough. You don't have a transcript, you just have the
clip, and the relevant clip is 2 minutes.
But if you have watched it, you can just confirm whether what the witness said is actually what happened. But otherwise, a transcript can be made later and made available.
Unfortunately, a transcript is not available as yet.
No, that's
fine. But having looked at it,
in due course, it is fine.
Having looked at the video, she does mention on at least 3 occasions that Booysen's matter or other prominent matters, high-profile matters in particular, were in fact on the court roll when she was there.
When she was appointed as acting director of public prosecutions.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, all right. Arrangements must be made for us to just get a transcript of that relevant part. We don't need to have a transcript of the whole interview.
Indeed.
Yeah, and it need not be now. We can get it in due course.
As it pleases, Chair.
Okay.
There are other matters, but those are still being attended to. Can I then suggest that we resume where we left yesterday, General Booysen? And that is on page 41 of Exhibit ZA. So yesterday, General Booysen, you gave evidence about various prosecutors whose names, in fact, populate slide 4, which forms part of the diagrams bundle. And the last prosecutor that you gave evidence in regard to was Advocate Sean Abrams. Is there anything that you wish to add following on the evidence that you gave yesterday in relation to him in view of the judgment that has now been presented to the Chair?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, not really, except that the diagram that was shown yesterday pertains to the Amigo case, the Pandey matter, the looting of the Secret Services account, and then the Cater matter. I did mention that yesterday, but I would just like to reiterate it. These same prosecutors invariably were also involved in the prosecution of members from SARS and also General Sabia and Ramat in the so-called rendition saga.
Okay. Following on from the judgment that has been handed up, in your view, what ought to have been the consequences in relation to the prosecution of, or rather the charges against Advocate Nombojiba?
Chair, although there's a majority and a minority judgment, but in the end, all three of the judges set aside the withdrawal of charges by Advocate Abrams. Advocate Juba had already appeared in court. The withdrawal then was set aside by a full bench of the High Court. So my understanding then is they should go back to where they were, that the matter should be placed back on the roll. My understanding is that Advocate Abrams then sent the docket to Advocate Smith from Northwest. Whether Advocate Smith had the authority or the jurisdiction to review what Advocate Abrams, Advocate Ferreira and Van Eerden had already decided upon, that's an open question. But to me it's almost akin to contempt of court, for the court to make a finding and then for Advocate Abrams not to place it back on the roll but to send it to another advocate to review the matter.
Do you know who, or was it Mr. Gerinel who had been appointed to prosecute in the matter originally? Who had been the prosecutor?
No, Chair, it was Advocates Ferreira and Van Eerden.
Yes, they were the prosecutors, or they were handling it.
They were appointed by Advocate Nkasana.
Yes.
They were both prosecuting in the matter.
Yes.
Advocate Juba had already appeared in court.
Yes.
They'd already prepped me. We'd already done our consultations when Advocate Abrams withdrew the charges.
Yes. So once the court had set aside the decision to withdraw the charges, the matter should have been pursued, that is prosecution, and one would have expected that the same prosecutors who had been prosecuting the matter would continue unless there was some valid reason to change them.
Indeed, Chair, what I also read in the judgment is that, and I find it quite strange, that Advocate Abrams, between him and Advocate Mogatli, had reviewed the matter, without Advocate Juba having made representations. So it is an initiative by Advocate Abrams without representations. I do not know whether she subsequently made representations, and that's the reason why it was sent to Advocate Smith. If not, then I would then say the case should have been placed back on the court roll.
Yes.
Without sending it to another, for almost like second guessing, it's almost like forum shopping, Chair, to find a prosecutor who will eventually nolly the matter.
Well, the legal team should look into that. All these matters that are coming up, we need to know exactly what happened, what are the facts, and so on and so on. And it's important to get all the facts, because with regard to, for example, prosecution, you may have a case where somebody makes, in good faith, an error of law and does something that may be seen as not right, but you may have a case where it's not an error of law. It's something serious, and therefore it becomes very important to get the facts right. What exactly happened? Who did what? What was before him or her before she made that decision? Okay, thank you.
If we can now then turn to paragraph 136, which is on page 41 of your affidavit. You now talk about other prosecutors. What do you mean by other prosecutors?
Chair, when this whole investigation, if I can say the KZN Manor investigation started, it was amazing how many resources were utilized in that investigation. I think at one stage they had about 9 prosecutors camping in Durban in a hotel on the beachfront. I would say for more than a year. Every time we would go to court, there was an entourage of prosecutors, 5 to 6, sometimes 7 prosecutors, but on average at least 4 prosecutors. And there had been 20 remands, 17 or 16 of them in the High Court. The prosecutors knew...
Like in one matter, or they were there, they were covering a number of matters, the same prosecutors, or it was a large team of prosecutors in regard to each matter?
In the matter in which myself and KZN Manor were prosecuted, the lead prosecutor, Advocate Mahema, knew the matter was not going to proceed. But in spite of that, they would every time fly down the day before, check into a hotel, a number of prosecutors. I would even go as far to say they could have used a local prosecutor to have the matter remanded, because it was like all those appearances were like 3-4 minutes, and most of the discussions took place in chambers. And we would go into court, and the actual court proceedings would be 2 or 3 minutes.
Yes.
And there were a number of advocates involved in this, in the prosecution of KZN Manor, and I do mention some of them here, like Advocate J.J. Malochwa, who incidentally also happens to be involved in other prosecutions of people fighting prosecution. There's Advocate Dawood Adams. Now, Chair, Advocate Dawood Adams, there had been an investigation against Advocate Dawood Adams by the SSU previously, where he was in charge of the witness protection program. And it emerged that while he was in charge of the program, he appropriated funds from the program for his own personal benefit. He had booked, I think it was 2 apartments in the beachfront or waterfront area in Cape Town, where his children stayed while they were studying at university, and the other one was used by himself and friends. When he was eventually caught out after this investigation, I think the investigation was done by Mr. Willie Hofmeyer. Certain recommendations were made for disciplinary steps. As far as I know, nothing was done about that. For whatever reason, there might have been valid reasons. But what concerns me is there you have an advocate from the National Prosecuting Authority stealing money. That's what it is. And he doesn't even get a slap. I know at the time he was suspended for a while, I think. But no criminal charges were pressed against him. Yet Advocate Abrams uses the same Advocate Dawood Adams, sends him to Greece to go and find evidence against me. And that's what I find so abhorrent, that people from the National Prosecuting Authority, there's prima facie evidence that they've committed a serious criminal offense. They are being used to investigate people that are investigating corruption. The few prosecutors I've mentioned, Chair,
before you go to those, just some clarity. The large team of prosecutors that you talked about that would come to Durban for the Cato Manor matter, even when everyone knew there would be a postponement. Would those be from head office? Is that right? Or would it be a mix of local and head office prosecutors?
Chair, there were no local prosecutors. It was always Advocate Mahema, Raymond Matenjwa, JJ Malochwa, and a few others. And as far as I'm concerned, they were wasting taxpayers' money. Flying 5 to 6 people down from Johannesburg to Pretoria, knowing the case is going to be remanded, check into a hotel on the beachfront, and then fly back the following day.
And how often did this happen, if you are able to tell? I mean, I don't. You talked about 20 or 19 postponements.
In the beginning, in the High Court appearances, it was like a circus at the court. They would have Caspers standing outside, snipers on the roof, personal body protection. And I think it was here by about the 8th or 9th appearance at the High Court that I commented in the media that they're wasting taxpayers' money by flying this whole entourage down just to do a remand. And after that comment of mine, the figures tapered down. But in the last couple of appearances, there would at least be 2 or 3 advocates with other personnel from the National Prosecuting Authority, whether they were protectors or whether they were media or liaison officers, I don't know. But on average, the last couple, they would be about 4 to 5. But prior to my complaint, there would sometimes be up to 5 to 6 prosecutors who would fly down, up and down, just to come and do a remand.
General Booysen, were you involved in the matter that you alluded to in relation to Advocate Dawood Adams? As in, were you part of the investigation team at all?
No, Chair, I had nothing to do with the investigation against Advocate Dawood. It came to my knowledge and attention, whereas he was sent to Greece to find evidence against me. Obviously, having an investigator background, then you start to investigate the people that are against you. And I established that he himself was the subject of a criminal, well, not of a criminal investigation. And it's clear from that report by Advocate Willie Hofmeyer that money were appropriated by Advocate Dawood, which in my view either constitutes fraud or theft. But nothing happens to him.
Both in terms of criminal charges and internal disciplinary matters, nothing happened to you as far as you know?
As far as what I've heard with regards to the disciplinary matters or the disciplinary matter, I think the period during which they had to take steps had lapsed. That's my understanding. So whether it was done on purpose or not, I cannot comment on that. But theft and fraud prescribes after 20 years, not like in a disciplinary matter that it prescribes in 60 days. So I cannot understand why no theft charges or fraud charges were preferred against Advocate Adams.
Thank you.
If we could then turn to page 42, where you deal with prosecutors who resign due to interference. And in particular, you mention certain prosecutors who, in your view, resigned for that reason. Can you please explain to the Chair in that regard?
Chair, I'll start with Advocate Becky Mnyati, who personally told me at the High Court in Durban that because of what was happening to him, as Chair would recall, he was the prosecutor that was going to prosecute Toshan Pandey and Colonel Naveen Madhu for the attempt to bribe me. He's the one who received the letter from Advocate Ngwebi, essentially querying the prosecution, and he then penned a legal opinion and indicated that he was going to indict Colonel Madhu in the High Court for corruption. And he told me personally that his stance on the matter had caused him to be overlooked for promotion, and he intended resigning, which he in the end did. I know that Advocate Simpiwe Mlotshwa, because of what happened to him in KZN, he also resigned from the NPA. Both those advocates now in private practice. Then there's Advocate Gerry Nel and Advocate Glynis Buitenbach, both in the instances that I've testified about, were both involved in a number of those prosecutions. Gerry Nel was involved with the previous prosecution of Mr. Selebi, but both also left because of what was happening at the MPA.
I take it that either the investigators or the legal team have been in touch with at least some of those, and that either they will be coming forward to testify, or at least we know what they have to say. If it hasn't been taken care of, it should be taken care of. We should at least speak to each one of those people, and if they've got information that falls within the term of reference, we should have them give evidence in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In that instance, can I ask us to look at bundle Exhibit ZD, which is the diagrams bundle, and slide 4, which is currently displayed.
What page?
Page 4.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So, General Booysen, you mentioned an Advocate Mzinyati. Just for the record, the periphery circle that appears on the bottom right-hand side, is that the same Advocate Mzinyati that you had just given evidence about?
No, Chair, it's not.
Sorry?
I don't see his name here. Is he here? Is his name here?
In the periphery circle? At the bottom right-hand side.
The one at the bottom of page 4?
No, it's not the same, Mzinyati. This is the one from Gauteng, Chair, which I testified about yesterday.
Okay. I think it will then be important that we have initials to differentiate which one we are dealing with at any one time.
I think this one is a Mzinyati and the other one is Mnyati, Chair, if I'm not...
But the one that you were talking about from Durban is Mzinyati, is that right?
No, he's Mnyati.
Mnyati, not Mzinyati.
Becky Mnyati. And this one from Gauteng is Mzinyati.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Mzinyati earlier on, so that might have confused Ms. September as well. Okay, so the one in Durban is Mnyati, not Mzinyati. Okay.
Thank you. And then the key at the bottom, on the bottom left-hand side, talks to common prosecutors involved in more than one case. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And so for the record, it is recorded that Advocate Mugwebi was involved in the Pandey case and the Amigos case, Advocate Mozing in the Amigos case and the Cato Manor case, and Advocate Norku in the Pandey case, the Amigos case, and the Cato Manor case.
That's correct, Chair.
There was evidence led in relation to Advocate Mugwebi's role in the Mdluli looting of the Secret Service account. Is there any particular reason why he is not recorded to have been included in that one too?
Chair, I did not have enough information, personal information, although I was subsequently obviously privy to the Justice Mogoro report and other newspaper reports. I did not have enough at my disposal to add him there.
Yes, okay.
And so this diagram then represents the evidence in your affidavit at the time that you deposed to it.
Indeed,
Is that
Chair.
correct?
Thank you.
General Booysen, do you know of a prosecution?
But I'm sorry, let me... I'm not sure that I understand this diagram completely. The key at the bottom has got Cato Manor written in a certain color. And I take it that that color is not exactly the same as the color where you have got many prosecutors, starting with Advocate Chauk at the top. But I take it that that portion of that circle tells us the names of prosecutors who were involved in the Cato Manor case. Would that be right, Major General Booysen?
That would be the circle to the right.
Yeah, to the right, yes. In other words, you see where it says Cato Manor at the bottom there. It's more or less the same color as that portion of the circle where you have got a number of names. So I'm taking it that what it does mean is that those prosecutors whose names appear in that portion of the green circle were involved in the Cato Manor case. Is that right?
They were, Chair, although there were a number of other prosecutors whose names are
not included.
I recall there were two female prosecutors as well, lady prosecutors.
Yes.
Whose names I do not have. I did not include them there. So the ones that I have, some of them, for instance, Advocate Adams, I've included him there, Chair, because he was sent to Greece according to papers by Advocate Sean Abrams.
Yes.
To go and establish if he could find evidence against myself, him and Advocate Mahema.
Yes.
That was the sum total of his involvement.
Yes.
Advocate Chauke, I think, was more an administrative role that he played in signing letters.
Yeah.
Advocate Matenjwa, Mahema, and J.J. Malocha, they were actively involved in traveling to KZN and doing the prosecutions.
Yes.
Advocate Pretorius, he was in the background. On one occasion, he wrote a legal opinion pertaining to Cato Manor investigation.
Yes. I thought that the purpose of the diagram was to show the cross-section of certain prosecutors in regard to different matters. So in regard to the Cato Manor, you can see there were a number of prosecutors. But then in regard to the others, it looks like you only see one name. So I'm not sure if I understand the purpose of the diagram correctly, because it appears only it appears that it's only the Cato Manor where you have a number of them, and a few of them. I mean, for example, you have got Advocate Jiba, written the acting NTPP, but her name is in a color for which there is no key, at least as far as I understand this. So I'm not able to make head or tail of what her presence in that portion means. And then you have Advocate Mosing in a portion of a larger circle that is colored in a certain way, but when I look at the key, there is no color like that, so I don't know what it means to have him there. Then you have Advocate Vimbai, his or her name, I don't know if it's a female or male, appears in a pink portion of a circle, but I don't see a key that tells me what it means for what case that is. Oh, okay, maybe the key is, part of the key is at the bottom, part of it is at the top. I see Amico's case. Maybe it means he was involved in the Amico's case. And then the Pandey investigation, the color is bluish, so I guess that shows that. But I don't see other colors. But also, if you just see one prosecutor there, I'm not sure that it's in line with what I thought was the purpose of the diagram. I thought the purpose was to say, look at the commonality of the same prosecutors in different cases. That's what I thought the idea was, but I might be mistaken.
Jeff, I could assist. If we look at Advocate Juba at the bottom, perhaps.
Yes.
Her circle intersects with other circles.
Yes.
So the main circle she's in is the looting of the Secret Services account. And the role she played there was the withdrawal of charges against Richard Nguli. But her name also intersects with the Cato Manor investigation.
I think what is there a case that has got the color where her name is? Because if the color of the part where name is was the same as the color for the looting of Secret Service account, then it would tell me that she was involved in both Cato Manor and the looting of the Secret Service account. But because it's got its own color for which I find no key, it confuses me. Or do I misunderstand? Maybe both of you understand this. I'm the only one who doesn't understand it.
No, not at all, Chair. If I may, General Booysen, the prosecutors that are reflected in this diagram, is it a comprehensive list of all prosecutors involved in all four matters?
Bar the one or two whose names I do not know, Chair, that I saw at court but whose names I do not know. Yes. Although their names appear in answering affidavits of Advocate Abrams.
Yes.
But I do not know.
You don't know, yeah.
And these are certainly the prosecutors that you are aware of who were involved in these four matters. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair, but I just want to clarify one aspect. If you look at, and it could perhaps be slightly misleading, if you look at the top, Chair, the Panda investigation, where we have Advocate Dorian Paver.
Yes.
He was the prosecutor who provisionally withdrew the charges in a 17 million rand case.
Yes.
But the reasons at the time...
Was it 70 or 60? 60 million or 70 million?
No, Chair, there was a 60 million one.
Yeah.
Then there was a 17 million one.
Oh,
that was the 15 million that they created invoices for.
Oh, okay.
Which eventually came to 17 million.
And that's 17.
17, not 70. Okay.
So, Chair, in that matter, Advocate Paver was the prosecutor. But because of the recordings that were indistinct, he provisionally withdrew the matter, and Chair would recall, Chair asked me where that docket is now, and my response was, it's now with IPIT.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I don't want this picture
yes.
to portray all these prosecutors as people being on the wrong side.
Yes. Okay, yeah, because that was my understanding, that the diagram shows a group of prosecutors who seemed to feature in most of these cases where people who were doing their job were being suspended, charged, and all. That was the impression I had. But what you are saying is it's not all of them who appear on the parade.
That's true,
You
Chair.
are not saying that about all of them. It's
That's
only some.
That's true, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
And who exactly are those some?
Chair, Advocate Paver, I think I've already explained why he had withdrawn those charges.
Yes.
Then there's Advocate Vambani, who's the head of the Commercial Crime Court in KwaZulu-Natal, whom I had not dealt with personally, but she has taken over the investigation as Chair would recall, the Amigo case that was with Advocate Dunywa. When the charges were withdrawn against Mabuyikulu and Koyeni. That docket was then taken away from Dunywa, Advocate Dunywa, and given to Advocate Vambani. I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
The rest of the prosecutors, Advocate Ngwebe, he's been involved with quite a number of these cases. Advocate Jiba with a number of these cases. Advocate Norko with some of the cases, Advocate Mozing with some of the cases, Advocate Pretorius with some of the cases, Advocate Matenjwa with some of the cases, Advocate Mayema with a number of these cases, Chair.
The common names, though, that appear through your observations in more than one matter are thus Advocate Ngwebe, Advocate Noku, Advocate Mozing, and Advocate Jiba. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you.
To move on in your statement, we are now at page 43. The next theme of your statement relates to law enforcement, and in particular, the Hawks and the South African Police Services. A similar diagram has accordingly been prepared, as with the prosecutors, which can be found at page 5 of Exhibit ZD. Is it correct that the same rationale in the preparation of the diagram for prosecutions informed the preparation of this slide?
That is so, Chair.
There are two persons in particular, outside of others, that your statement, or rather your affidavit, deals with. And the first person that you mentioned at page 43 of Exhibit ZA, paragraph 140, is Major General Burning Klemeza.
That's correct, Chair.
Major General Klemeza was appointed on the 24th of December 2014 as the acting head of the Hawks. What were your observations following his appointment?
Chair, for lack of a better word, when he was appointed, all hell broke loose within the DPCI. I cannot describe it in any other way. He was appointed, I think, on the 25th or 24th of December. The very first thing he did, and that's what started to raise some red flags to me. The very first thing he did was, I received a call from him 6 days after his appointment, on New Year's Eve, in the afternoon.
Which year was this?
2014, Chair. That's just after General Dramat was suspended.
Thank you.
I received a call from him and he said to me that he would like to see me on the 1st of January. Chair, normally your operational people work on the 1st of January. It's the first time in my police career of 40 years, of which I sat at home for more than 3 years, that I'd been summoned to a meeting in the morning of a New Year's Day.
On New Year's Day?
That's correct, Chair.
Were you supposed to fly up to...
No, Chair. I'm going to get to that, Chair.
Okay.
So, Chair, he wanted to see me at the provincial headquarters where my office is situated. Initially, he told me he wanted to see me, I think it was 10 o'clock. So I went to bed early on New Year's Eve. I didn't celebrate with the family. And I woke up that morning just after 7, and it was General Ntlemetsa.
At that stage, you were not under suspension. One has got to try and
I'm back at work now.
You are back at work at that time.
I'm back at work, Chair. So I was in my post. I was busy reviewing all these cases against Pandey, Madu, General Nkobeni, etc. I woke up just after 7. He phoned me and he said to me, "No, I need to come through now. He's at the office already." So I said to him, "Okay, I'll get dressed," which I did. And I drove through to Durban. It took me about half an hour to get there. And on my arrival there, I phoned him to ask him where he was. And he said to me, "No, he's on the 17th floor with the provincial commissioner." Normally, Chair, when the head of the Hawks comes to KwaZulu-Natal, like General Dramat, he phones the provincial head, like myself, or whoever, if it's Shadrack Sabia in Gauteng, or if it's Matakata in Cape Town, to make travel arrangements for him. On this instance, he made his own travel arrangements. He was fetched from the airport by a colonel and taken to the General Nkobeni's office. Now, the Chair would recall that Nkobeni at the time was the subject of a criminal investigation. I went up to the 17th floor.
Before you go up to the 17th floor, who was the colonel that transported Major General Ntlemetsa?
Chair, it was Colonel Clarence Jones, who was one of my colonels. So normally, I'll get the call, I'll designate someone to go and fetch whoever from the airport. In this instance, Colonel Clarence Jones was phoned, I do not know by whom, to fetch General Ntlemetsa from the airport. And I mentioned Colonel Jones here specifically because during the Pandey investigation, I was sitting in a restaurant, and I'm digressing a little bit now because the advocate wants me to say who Jones is. I was sitting at a restaurant in the Durban North at the Bite Your Tongue restaurant when Advocate Knox Molele, he's from the National Prosecuting Authority, walked by and he saw me and he came and sat down with me and we had a chat, and he told me that he's got some concerns that Jones had been making contact with him. At that time, Advocate Molele was the head of asset forfeiture in KZN. And he told me that Jones, who had absolutely nothing to do with the Pandey investigation, had approached him to write a letter to say that there's no case in terms of asset forfeiture, to have the 15 million which I had frozen released. Simultaneous to that, the Brigadier Lawrence Kemp, who was the head of finances in the province, phoned me and asked me who Colonel Jones was. I said to him, "It's one of the colonels that report to me." So he said to me he was snooping around at the financial offices, making queries about the 15 million I'd frozen. So I said to Kemp, "I'll just ignore him. He's got nothing to do with that investigation. I'd frozen the money, and I'll be the one that will unfreeze it." I wrote to General Ntlemetsa no fewer than 3, it could be 4, it could even be 5 times, reporting Jones's conduct to him. He never even bothered to acknowledge receipt of any of my letters, to such an extent that I phoned Brigadier Kubi Moodley, who's now the head of the Hawks in the Free State, who is in charge of those investigations, those type of investigations. I said to him, Kubi, what is going on here? And I could sense a feeling of discomfort from Moodley, and what I gathered from what he was trying to tell me, that he was being frustrated or inhibited by Ntlemetsa. So, Chair, back to the meeting at national headquarters, provincial headquarters. I went up in the lift, and when I arrived on the 17th floor, you turn to your left to go to the Provincial Commissioner's office. And as I approached her office, the secretary was also there. So she jumped up and said to me, no, wait, you must go and sit in another office there in the corner. So I went and sat in the corner in another office. After about 15 minutes, Ntlemetsa joined me in the office, and he asked me about, number one, what does my equity profile look like? I thought it was strange because my equity profile was available on the system at his office. And then he complained and said to me, no, you've got too many Indians here. So I said, well, it's none of my doing. I inherited all these people from the Scorpions. I cannot just chase them away now. I've inherited them. And then he said to me he needed a report from me. And I couldn't understand what the report is.
What did he say?
He wanted a report from me.
About what? About the people who report to you?
Well, inter alia, about my equity profile, and also about investigations that we were busy with. But he was very incoherent. I couldn't make out what he was trying to say.
The equity profile referred to what?
My racial...
the racial and gender representation of people under you.
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
But in my opinion, that was just a guise to come to KwaZulu-Natal. Because what's he doing talking to a suspect in my criminal investigation? General Dramat would never have done that.
Yes, and just to complete the story, I assume the provincial commissioner was present at the office on the day.
She was there as well, Chair.
Yes, okay, continue.
And that's what really concerned me is he spends time with a suspect in a criminal investigation, then he tries to make me believe he's there to look at my equity profile on the 1st of January 2015 in the morning, which didn't make sense. And he then asked me, Chair, and I'm not exaggerating, the way he communicates, you can never figure out what he wants or what he doesn't want. So he asked me for a report.
What could have been so urgent about the gender and the racial representation of staff under you on the 1st of the new year?
Chair, that was a ruse. That was a ruse to do something else. And that ruse was immediately, while Dramat was suspended, I wrote out an application to fly to Cape Town. I wanted to go and see Dramat because I knew Dramat was under severe strain at the time. And my intention to go and see Dramat was to tell him to hang in there, that we need him, the country needs him, we need him there. So when I sent the itinerary, unbeknown, well, I didn't realize then until afterwards what his gripe with Dramat was. So I didn't say I wanted to go and see Dramat. I wrote that I want to go for investigations. And the thing came back immediately, and he wanted a full report from me, what do I want to go and do in Cape Town. So I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. So I bought my own plane ticket, and I flew there, and I went and I did have the meeting with General Dramat. So he says to me, yes, and what did you want to do in Cape Town? And he caught me off guard. So I quickly had to think. I said, no, I wanted to go and see an investigator, Colonel Kobus Roelofse, but he happens to be on leave in Jeffreys Bay or something, which he was. So he says to me now he wants a report. And then he says to me, and he wants the report the following morning. I said, no, late that afternoon. I had to phone Brigadier Maronsela, Captain Pelser, and Colonel Andre Laats to come into the office and extract all this information from the computers for him.
Yeah.
When I was finished I then went home. A few minutes later, he phones me, he says to me, no, I must come back to town now. He wants a thing now. I got dressed again, all the way back to town. When I arrived there, he wasn't at the office. So I phoned him, I said, okay, we're almost done with the report. He says to me, no, I must now bring it to the airport. Now I was starting to get irritated with him. We basically had the same rank, although he was acting as the head. I said to him, why don't you rather come to the office? I've asked people to come in on the 1st of January, at least just come and greet them and say thank you for sacrificing the New Year's Day. So he says to me, no, he's busy patrolling on the beachfront now.
Patrolling?
Yes, he's busy patrolling on the beachfront. I don't know what...
Was that his job?
No, Chair.
Oh.
That was not his job. And
But what was your understanding of what he was saying? That he was patrolling, I mean, it was obviously festive season, and I come from Durban, so I know that sometimes there are a lot of SAPS to make sure that in the beachfront, people are safe and so on. Was your understanding that that's what he meant?
Chair, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he wanted to be hands-on, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for that.
Yes, okay.
So, Chair, so he says to me, no, he's coming back now. I must meet him in front of the office. So we hurriedly got the reports together, and I took an envelope with the report that he wanted, which I thought he wanted. I went downstairs, and Maronsela was standing behind me, and I think Colonel Laats was also there, and I think Pelser. So he sat, and that's when I saw Colonel Jones was driving him around in the provincial commissioner's car. Not a private car.
In the provincial commissioner's car?
One of the state official cars, not the private car.
Yes.
And I immediately felt uncomfortable. I mean, Colonel Jones, I'd reported to him. He's driving him around. He's driving him around in the police vehicle that's allocated to the provincial commissioner. He's meeting with the provincial commissioner, who's a suspect of mine. But he was sitting in the back of the car. So he pressed the button for the window to go down, and I bent over and I gave him the report in the envelope, and he looked into the envelope. He says, no, but it's empty. I said, no, the report must go inside there. He had a look at the report and he said, no. Chair, that man's got a I cannot describe to you how he talks to people. And he started shouting, no, and then I had enough of him. I said to him, listen, then you need to start communicating properly. And he could see that I was angry, so he jumped out of the car and he took me by the arm and he took me around the back. He says, no, Johan, let us not fight. I said to him, but I don't know what it is that you want. Then he said to me, no, the report he actually wanted was, why did I want to go to Cape Town? Brigadier Maronsela actually came to me and pulled me back, and he said to me, General, just leave it. Maronsela traveled with me in my car because we live in the same suburb, well, he used to. And on the way back to Mamsentoti, he phoned me and he was on speakerphone, that's in Tlametsa now. And he says to me, hey Johan, we mustn't fight. You people in KZN, you are the best. And he was basically boosting, and then Maronsela
kind of apologizing indirectly or something.
Indirectly, like Chair. Yeah. And then Maronsela looked at me and he just shook his head, and I also just shook my head. So, Chair, the first thing he did after this appointment was to come and to meet one of my suspects. The second thing he did is, I know from there, I haven't got the exact dates, he traveled to Cape Town, where the lead investigator in the looting of the Secret Services account was Colonel Kobus Hulofse.
I do say now in Cape Town.
In Cape Town, Chair.
Yes.
It could have been a day after or a day or two later, but he traveled from Durban to Cape Town. And there, he indirectly intimidated Rule Officer. Rule Officer told me that himself. And later on, he took away the investigation from Rule Officer. Chair, there was another investigation that we were doing at KZN that I'll perhaps talk about later on. It might be irrelevant, which I had to engage with Rule Officer. And Rule Officer expressed his frustrations. It was almost the impression that I gained, because I wanted him to come and see us in KwaZulu-Natal. And he said to me, he can't, he's been bound, he cannot leave the office. It's almost like he was shackled to stay in the Western Cape.
Now, in regard to the investigation that, did you say is a rule officer? Is it, what was the name of the?
Colonel Kobus, Rule Officer, Chair.
Rule Officer.
That's correct,
Chair.
Chair.
To pronounce it correctly.
That's correct, Chair.
Is there anything significant about the investigation from which he was taken off by General Clemenza?
Chair, it's highly significant because Kobus Rule Officer, Colonel Kobus Rule Officer, was the lead and main investigator in the looting of the Secret Services account.
Yes. Now, I understood, I think yesterday, that the looting of the secret account that we talked about related to KZN. Is that the same, or it's what, different provinces?
No, Chair. So the initial investigation into the looting of the Secret Services account were initiated from a report by General Mark Hankel, which was signed off by Dr. de Kock. That was almost, if I can call it, the whistleblowing point. Yeah. Simultaneous to that, I think, well, General Dramat then was overseeing the investigation from head office, but the actual investigator for the looting of the, we call it the slush fund, was Colonel Kobus Rule Officer. At the very same time that Kobus Rule Officer got involved with that investigation, General Shadrack Sabia got reopened the kidnapping and the murder case of which General Mdluli was a suspect. And he was also a suspect in the looting of the slush fund. So at a much later stage, when General Mkwanazi became the acting National Commissioner, he also directed, because by then there were indications that there was a KwaZulu-Natal leg of the looting of the slush fund by crime intelligence. General Mkwanazi then appointed Brigadier Simon Madonsela, the one that I know, to investigate that leg. That was a much smaller leg. The investigation that Rule Officer did was much more comprehensive and is much bigger than the one that Madonsela did in KZN, Chair.
So the one that Colonel Rule Officer was conducting may be described as the national investigation relating to this secret account, or not really?
I would say so, Chair, because
to differentiate it from the one in KZN. To differentiate from the leg, the KZN leg, as you call it.
Yes, Chair. So
the national leg and the KZN leg, would that help to distinguish which investigation?
I would say the Western Cape leg.
Or the Western Cape
although
leg.
the investigations that Colonel Rule Officer did also included cases that occurred here in Gauteng.
Yes, but he and Madonsela were doing these investigations independent. It's not like one was helping the other, was under another one.
They were doing it independently.
Independently. So it would be in order to talk about them independently.
Yes, Chair.
Then maybe the KZN leg and the Western Cape leg, even though maybe the Western Cape, from what you say, might not be completely accurate. But if we say Western Cape leg, then we know which one we're talking about.
That will be the Rule Officer one.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Chair, we are informed that Colonel Kobus Rule Officer will be coming to the Commission to give evidence himself.
Yes, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure as we talk further I don't get confused because there was the KZ1 and KZN1. So if we talk about the KZN leg, then I know which one. If we talk about the Western Cape one, then I know which one we're talking about.
And then would now be an appropriate time to take the short adjournment?
Yes, let's take the tea adjournment. It's now 20 past. We'll resume at 25 to 12. We adjourn.
All right.
switch la press la pale khona quick play. Ethe ngisalungisa khona audio abazoyidlala
in my view, should be revised because I know a number of officers, they will not set a foot wrong or report something because they are scared that they will not be promoted. Chair, I've sat on those promotions. In the past, how it worked is you had to attain a certain qualification. You had to write an exam to become a sergeant. You had to write an exam to become a warrant officer. You had to write an exam to become a commissioned officer and then attend a course to become a lieutenant. Then you had to attend every second year, for every second rank, you had to attend another course. So currently how it works, a post is advertised. And whether you have the right attributes or qualifications, Chair, I sat on those panels at senior level, where invariably the decisions are taken before any of the candidates appear. It's a farce.
Who is going to get into that post?
Yes, Chair. It's the promotional system in SABC is a complete farce. In most of the panels that I sat, and I sat in some panels with for a very senior post with General Nkobeni, and we would sit there and we independently have to mark candidates on various aspects. And once the candidate leaves the room, she would ask each one of us, Johan, then I'll say 4. Why do you give him 4? Then I'll say, well, that's... And then, so what I eventually did, Chair, is if the candidate deserved a 6, I'll give him a 6. If he deserved a 3, I'll put a 3 there. If she said to me, Johan, then I'll listen to what the rest say, I'll say, no, they all say 6, I also say 6, but then I put my 3 there. Because they decide before the time who is going to be promoted. It's very rare that the candidate, and Chair, believe me, it's got nothing to do with race. I'm not talking about whites and blacks here. There are many, many black officers, good officers, that have been overseen because they do the right thing. They worked with me. I've sat on those panels. I talk of experience.
Well, if we are to make recommendations as to what should be done in the future to avoid some of the problems that maybe the law enforcement agencies have found themselves in, it would be important to have as much information as possible from people on the ground who know how these things work. So people like you and other people and organizations that may be involved in law enforcement agencies who wish to make recommendations as to what should be looked at in terms of recommendations, who wish to make submissions, in due course, will be allowed, and they must be ready to make submissions as to what should be done. Of course, before you can make recommendations about what should be done, you need to know what has happened, and that's why we need to go through this, so that the measures that must be taken must match what the problem was that is sought to be addressed.
Chair, and I'm saying that in the context of people wanting to come forward,
yes,
to expose the rot in the police.
Yes.
And believe me, Chair,
yes,
the corruption is rife in the police. I've been out of the police for 2 years, but I still work with law enforcement. And I'm not saying everyone, Chair. I'm leveling accusations against prosecutors here and senior police officers, but there are a number of prosecutors, Chair, that I still work with that do a
good
honest
job.
day's job.
Yeah.
And a number of policemen. But unfortunately, those people are at the mercy of people that are appointed above them, who are doing the bidding of the people above them.
No, thanks. I'm also talking exactly from the same point. So it's not just a question of addressing issues at SABC that people might be concerned about that have got nothing to do with the commission. It's to the extent that a certain environment may be providing a fertile ground for corruption within law enforcement agencies, so that needs to be looked at if we want to make sure that such corruption doesn't continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. General Booysen, you touched on the issue in relation to human resources and the appointment of people within the police. In your affidavit, you talk specifically about Major General Ntlemeza's approach to promotions in particular. Can you please explain the detail in relation to that?
Historically, how the promotions work in provinces. The provinces they deal with the promotions in their own province. For instance, if a captain's post was advertised, the long listing will be done at provincial level, the short listing will be done, the interviews everything will be done at provincial level. Then the recommendations go to national. At national, they will either sanction it, or if they think that your equity profile might not be right, they might take the number 2 candidate, which is not a problem. The problem started when General Ntlemeza became the head of the Hawks. He hijacked the whole promotion system of the Hawks. All the posts that were advertised within the Hawks were dealt with from his office. He excluded the provincial heads, all of us. At a meeting at Polokwane, I took issue with that, and I said to him, we as provincial heads, and I was talking on behalf of all the 9 provinces, because we discussed it amongst ourselves, the provincial heads. I said, we as provincial heads, we know the people in the provinces. We know the dynamics of crime in the provinces. In KZN, for instance, I know about faction fights, political killings. And I do not know about gangsterism that occurs in the Cape Town. So I would know the profile of the person that need to be appointed. And then he basically made some excuse saying to me, no, well, he'll incorporate us in the processes in the future, which he never did. But what he did in fact do, which I found very strange, he co-opted a police officer from KwaZulu-Natal, Major General Ngembe. Now, she was outside the Hawks. She was from the SAP side, and she was at Human Resources in KwaZulu-Natal. And he would take her all over the country to do interviews and appointments. I bumped into her one day in the lift at KwaZulu-Natal, and she said to me, now she's been co-opted by General Ntlemeza to do these appointments, and she said to me, it's not her field, and she doesn't know anything about investigations. In KwaZulu-Natal, for instance, I always say the person that carries the purse calls the shots. So there where your HR is a very important component of a company or a unit. In my instance, for instance, there was a captain, then she's a colonel now, Sonakas. She was the support head, dealing with finances, dealing with appointments. General Ntlemeza, without any cause, sent me a notice of an intention to suspend her for a very trivial matter which he wasn't even responsible for. So I wrote back to him and I said to him, this matter has been disposed of. Disciplines a line management function. I regard the matter as finalized. A week after he suspended me, he suspended her. She sat at home for a full year.
So he disregarded what you had to say?
Yes, Chair. He suspended her. She sat at home for a full year. He then charged in terms of the disciplinary code. She asked me to come and give evidence, which I did. We raised a few points in limine, and the matter was remanded. And I told the chairperson, because what General Tlemetsa would do is he would get these cohorts from other provinces. General Sabia calls them the assassins. He would get them there, and your fate is sealed with the type of disciplinaries that he concocted. So I told the chairperson there, and I told the employer representative, if they proceed with this matter, it will probably be taken on review in the Labour Court, and having given them the facts, I will make sure that the taxpayer won't pay for that. They'll pay the modus proprius. They'll pay from their own pockets. And we never heard from them again. Then a couple of months later, she got a letter to go back to work.
But did the disciplinary hearing proceed or not?
They abandoned it, Chair, and up until today, I know she's been writing for a finding on the matter. Up until today, there's been no finding. What they did is, when they saw that they couldn't take it further, they told her to go back to work, but then transferred her to another place. I understand she's taken that matter to the SABC, and as recent as about 2 or 3 months ago, there was an agreement between the SABC, between her and police during the arbitration process that she'd take up a regional post. But she'd been out of that post for the better part of 2 years. What I'm trying to demonstrate, Chair, is the same thing happened at national level, where there's a Brigadier van Mark and a Brigadier...
I'm sorry, before you go to national, you wrote to General Tlemetsa and say the matter about which you are contemplating suspending this person has been disposed of. He didn't respond to you, but about 5 days or so later, or a week later, the person was suspended. She stayed at home for about a year. There was a hearing, disciplinary hearing. You took part, or you indicated that if this matter was taken on review, you would make sure that General Tlemetsa, whoever you might have said, paid from his own pocket, and then the matter was abandoned. Is that more or less correct?
More or less, Chair. When I wrote to him that management function's been disposed of, I did not hear from him again, except about 3 weeks later. I did not mention this. A colonel arrived in my office from his office, and he said he's here to do an investigation. I said, what investigation? He says, no, that some files went missing out of another member's car. So I said to him, who sent you? He said, no, it's Tlemetsa. Now that related to the thing that they wanted to suspend that person for. So I said to him, but it's finalized. So I said, how long are you here for? He said to me, no, for 3 days. So I still said to him, listen, you go and sit in your hotel room, buy yourself a barrel of Kentucky, then you can have some Kentucky, then go back and tell General Tlemetsa, he must stop poking his nose into my province. Because, Chair, I was getting tired of his antics. So he left, then he left it. Yeah. Then he suspended me, Tlemetsa suspended me. And about a week...
For what now?
That's for the fraud matter.
The one that we have discussed before?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
And about a week after he suspended me, he suspended her as well.
That lady, was it a lady?
That was a lady, Chair.
Yes. And then the matter that was taken to arbitration related to head transfer, the validity or fairness of head transfer, is that what was taken to arbitration?
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. But do you know whether the reasons for the transfer were in any way connected with the reason for her suspension? Or was it something else?
Chair, all they wanted is they wanted to take control of key posts. She was unlawfully suspended. She went back to work after their hands were basically forced because there were questions in Parliament of members sitting at home for more than a year on suspension. So they were under pressure to let her go back to work. Now she goes back to work, but they don't want her in that position. So they transfer to another position, away from province. And it's that decision that she took to the Triple SBC.
Yes.
If I could, just for the record, what exactly does Triple SBC stand for?
Chair, that's equivalent to for
The bargaining council.
yes, it's very similar to the SCMA, but for government officials.
It's a bargaining council.
If I could then take you to paragraph 155 of your statement, you talk about specifically Major General Ntlemeza's replacement of provincial heads. Can you give clarity to that detail, please?
Chair, when the Hawks were established, General Ramat became the head of the Hawks. They advertised posts for the heads of the Hawks in 9 provinces. 9 of us were appointed as head of the Hawks. When Ntlemeza came there, and most of them were, I would say the majority, if not all of them, were capable people to lead the provinces from the Hawks' side. But then the Glenister judgment came out. And according to the Glenister judgment, the appointments had to be made by the head of the Hawks. Prior to the Glenister judgment, appointments had to be made by the National Commissioner. So Ntlemeza used that as an excuse to re-advertise all 9 the posts, and except for one, I think it was General Ntsinka, who also on her own accord went to another post later on. But out of the 9 provinces, he appointed 8 new people as head of the Hawks.
I mean, except for one, all the others who had been there before him were not retained.
No, Chair. In my case, Chair, what he did with me is while I was suspended, that's when he did the advertisement, and I still had my matter pending at the SCA. While that matter was pending, he appointed someone else in my post.
To act?
No, permanently, Chair. As part of that advertisement group. So, technically speaking, that post, I was in that post until the court case was disposed of. So he didn't wait for that. He advertised that post and filled it with someone else.
And what happened after that? I assume you didn't just take that as it is.
Chair, at that stage, I've been in and out of court over a period of 5-6 years. And I just thought to myself, if I have to, you had to pick your fights.
You had reached a point where you were quite exhausted in terms of all the fights you had to put up.
That is so, and Chair, I mean, Chair, every single matter that I took to court, as I've said, and I'll mention that later on in terms of the financial implications to the taxpayer, every single one I won. But Chair, litigating with the NPA and SABC, they use taxpayers' money. Myself and the KZN guys, we had to find funds to fight what was happening to us. But at that stage, besides being exhausted, Chair, you have to pick your fights, because if you're fighting all over the show and you spread yourself so thin on the ground. So some of these things I had to let go. Other more important issues I pursued.
Yes. This was close to the time that you were going to retire.
Yes, Chair.
So the person who was appointed, is it still the same person who's still there now, or you don't know?
He's still there, Chair.
Do you have anything to add to this in relation to a certain Brigadier Ronald Vermaak? and Colonel Lynn Devashayam, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Chair, Brigadier Vermaak was the national support head at General Dramat's office, and Colonel Lynn Devashayam was one of her subordinates. Chair, at any meeting, whether you're a woman or the way he spoke to people, sometimes I would cringe. He would shout at them, he would make racial remarks, he would belittle people. And Vermaak and Devashayam told me personally that they just couldn't handle it any longer. I mean, he would, and that was not only with the two of them, if he had found out that anyone had any contact with General Dramat, he would go berserk. I just couldn't understand it why at one stage. And then eventually Brigadier Vermaak took a transfer, and so did Colonel Devashayam, also a very key post because that was human resources. And when General Labia was appointed, I actually approached Vermaak and Devashayam, and I said to them, look, we need to assist General Labia to get the ship afloat again, because I think General Labia inherited a sinking ship because of what General Ntlametsa did to the Hawks. And she said to me, General, there's no ways I can go back to that place. If I see that place, I'm traumatized. That's how he dealt with people. Chair, in my instance, when he served my suspension notice on me, they arrived, it was a public holiday. I wasn't at home. I received a call from a neighbor. He said to me, the riot police is at your house. So I said, what do you mean? He says, no, they're jumping over the fences with guns. And so I phoned my domestic aide, and I said to her, Lindy, what's going on? She says, oh, too many police.
Was this while you were at work or what?
Yes, Chair. That's when Ntlametsa suspended me. But now to sit and give me the notice. So it was a public holiday. Then I get a call from a lawyer, Carl van der Merwe. He says to me, he received a call. They're looking for you. I said, well, I'm in Pietermaritzburg now. The next moment he phones me, he says, no, it's a public holiday. He says to me, no, the security from his office phoned him now. Chair, I actually have video material that to show how they take the National Intervention Unit people. They actually, when they approach the lawyer's office, they jump out of the vehicles with their guns, they go into the foyer. The offices were closed, and you can see they talked to the security. They went upstairs, came back. That just to serve.
What?
That wasn't Ntlametsa at his best. He wanted to prove a point. If you go against me, this is what's going to happen to you. Even when I was suspended, eventually suspended, he went to my office. My secretary was sitting there, and my door was locked. And he said to them, "They must open." And by the way, Chair, he took with her, just to prove the point, he took with him General Nkubeni, the suspect in my investigation. They went to my office, and he threatened my secretary that she should open the door, otherwise she'll also be suspended. So it was very high-handed. If you dared to go against him, whether you were right or wrong, and I think he wanted to prove a point. Booysen went against me. He sends these people to my house in battle gear to come and serve a notice on me.
But you say these people you were told were jumping over the fence or something?
Well, I wasn't there, Chair.
In your house, yeah,
my neighbor phoned me. He said to me, the riot police is at your house. So I phoned my domestic aide, and I said, Lindy, what's going on? She says, no, there's lots of policemen at the house. They're coming from the sides, and they've got big guns. And then I get the call from my attorney. They're looking for me. Then they go to my attorney's office, and that I have I have a little video clip of that, how they descended upon his office to come and serve a notice on me.
The ones who had gone to your house, did you get to know what the purpose of their visit was?
They wanted to serve me with a
notice of your suspension.
That's correct, Chair.
So some went to your house, others went to your attorney's office, or it was the same group?
The same group, Chair. When they couldn't find me at my house,
yes.
They went to my attorney's office, but I don't understand why they went to his office. It was a public holiday.
Yes.
There was no one there.
Yes.
Enough
If I could ask you to turn to Exhibit ZB, and in particular, page 306.
Tell me, Major General Booysen, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ms. September. By this time, you had been, in the law enforcement sector for decades. Is that how notices of suspension are delivered or served on police officers when they need to be suspended?
Definitely not, Chair. I've suspended officers before. I call them to my office, I tell them the reason for the suspension, and I'll give them the notice. I'll let them sign for it. I treat them as human beings, whether they're right or wrong. I've never ever seen anything like it. Chair, you can just imagine what my neighbors must have thought with the riot police is descending upon my house. My lawyer phoning me, there's policemen all over the show at his office. And as I said, I have a video clip that can prove that. But no, Chair, it's completely irregular to do that. I pose no threat.
At page 306, you have an affidavit that's been posed to by Ronald Vermaak.
I'm sorry, which exhibit are you now
Exhibit ZB.
Okay. What page?
Page 306. Is it correct that this is an affidavit deposed by Ronald Vermaak? And the date of this particular affidavit is dated 8 February 2019, as reflected on page 313.
That's correct, Chair.
Have you read through this affidavit?
Chair, I've just perused through it.
And does it ascribe the same or similar manner of your dealings with Major General Nklameza, and in particular the relationship between Ronald Vermaak and Major General Nklameza?
It's indeed so, Chair. She goes in a bit of more detail here, but and I've picked up something that I wasn't even aware of. If I would go to National Head Office, she was actually hiding in the office as she didn't want to be seen with me, because...
Who was that?
Brigadier Vermaak.
Oh, she wouldn't want to be seen with you.
Yeah, so I now realize when I went to head office, I could never find her there.
Oh.
Because she was hiding from me, because she was scared if Nklameza sees her with me, all hell will break loose.
Yeah.
We are now on page 48 of your affidavit. In particular from paragraph 157, which talks about the appointment of the head of the Hawks.
Well, didn't he cover this last time? No. Or is there something to be covered?
No, Chair, this is something new.
Oh, I seem to remember Major General Booysen talking about him and other people going to Cape Town for interview, but General Nklameza not being among them, and to his how he was taken to the Gupta residence. Major General Booysen?
No, I haven't testified about that, Chair.
Sorry?
No, I have not testified about that, Chair.
Not the second part?
No, not,
also the interview?
Not the Gupta interview, I haven't testified.
Yes, but the other one you did, about the
yes,
interview
Chair.
you did. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Or maybe it's just I read and then you haven't testified. Okay.
Chair, he certainly did allude to certain aspects of his application for the position.
No, that's fine. Continue and cover what you need to cover.
General Booysen, do you know Mr. Duduzane Zuma?
I do, Chair.
How do you know him?
Chair, I cannot recall the date. It was when I was back at work. A person, I can't recall what his name is. Maybe if we break, I'll get his name. phoned me and he wanted to meet me. And I met with him, and he told me that he was a friend and a partner of Duduzane Zuma. And then he said to me that there's a complaint they want to lodge with regards to a criminal investigation against a white guy. I think his surname was Erlang, but I can get his surname, Chair. The way he explained it to me is that Duduzane did not want to go into business with this white male, but he convinced Duduzane to go into business with this white male. And it is related to online betting. And apparently this white male had then defrauded them with millions. And this guy was now sitting in the UK. He then said to me that this white male, the Hawks from Cape Town, had mirror imaged this white male's computer in Durban. I said, no, I don't believe it, because I would have been aware of that. So I thought, let me just take a chance. So I phoned Colonel Rulofse. I said to him, Kobus, are you aware? He says, no, he knows about it. They did mirror image this white male's computer. And there's an investigation by the British police regarding this online betting thing. Be that as it may, Chair, so the complaint from his side was that we should investigate. It was a couple of million rand.
And whose side, when you say his side, do you mean?
Sorry?
Who was the complainant in the matter?
The complainant would have been, Chair, I'll have to get his name.
Is it the name that you can't remember at the moment?
But I'll get it now, Chair, when we break.
Yeah.
So he said they want us to do the criminal investigation. And Chair, I was really wary. I don't want to do criminal investigations because we met at a restaurant. So I appointed a Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, his nickname is Tini Botha, to open up an inquiry and a docket to investigate the matter. So I said, okay, we'll investigate the matter. Subsequent to that, he wanted to see me again, and we met in a restaurant in Florida Road.
But let's just go back. What was the actual complaint that had to be investigated about the online business?
Judge, one of these technical things, online betting.
Okay, some technical things, yeah.
I'm not very familiar with these commercial investigations, Chair. But the complaint at face value appeared to be legitimate, and Colonel Botha also reported back to me that there appears to have been crime committed by this white gentleman who's now in England. At a second meeting, this time around, I met this gentleman, his name I cannot recall, and Duduzane came, and there's another tall colored male with him. The colored male recognized me, but I did not recognize him. And but the way he spoke to me, it's like we knew each other. And eventually I picked up that he was a person by the name of Lloyd Hill. And Lloyd Hill, Chair, if I can just digress a little bit, there was allegations against the previous president about gangsters that they met up with, and very foul language were used. Now this was the same Lloyd Hill who was at that meeting with the president. So this Lloyd Hill, I remembered him when I was a young lieutenant. He used to work in Wentworth. He was involved with narcotics. So then I realized who this guy was, because he'd gotten much older. And we spoke about the investigation, myself and Duduzane, and I told him, look, Colonel Botha is dealing with the matter. I don't think they tried to put pressure on me. I think, well, nowadays the public has to put pressure on the police to do their work. Then on an occasion I was in Gauteng, and I received a call from a captain, Captain Dirk Swart. Now, Captain Dirk Swart happens to be friends with Edward Zuma and Duduzane Zuma. And he said to me that Duduzane would like to meet me here in Pretoria, because they knew that I was here. So I said to him, that's fine. So I drove with my son Eben, And we met them in Sandton. But when I met them, Duduzane was with a youngster more or less his age, a white guy. So we just spoke in generalities, and we were my son's car, so they said, no, we should go to the office. So we drove to office, and I think I'll be able to find it in Sandton. And we went inside. I saw people there, I don't know who they were. Thinking back, I suspect it could have been the offices of the Guptas, because the boardroom we sat in had a big plastic thing with a piece of coal inside. But we just had tea, and we spoke to my son spoke to this young white lady, but they were friends, Duduzane and this youngster. They were in the same school. And Duduzane spoke about that they were still expanding their business to make armored vehicles, and next time when I'm here, they'll take me in the helicopter and we'll go and have a look at the place where they build the armored vehicles. I still said it'd be nice. And then we left. Then on a second occasion, I think I've got the date in my statement.
Yes. In fact, if I take you to paragraph 158, it's understood that there was in fact a meeting shortly before your interview.
Yes. So, Chair, I was shortlisted to become the head of the Hawks nationally, and our interviews, I think, was, well, the date on which I saw him was Duduzane, was the 16th. I think the interviews were 2 or 3 days after that.
And that's the 16th of August
2015.
Thank you.
I once again got a call from Captain Dirk Swart, who said to me that he calls him Zani. He would like to see me again. So I said to him, okay, where is he? He said, no, he's in Sandton. So I said to him, okay, Chair, I just want to interrupt myself there. Prior to that, I also got a call from Dirk Swart who said that Zani wanted to see me. I was on my way to hospitals, a little company of Mary Hospital in Pretoria, where my brother's son had a brain operation. So I said, well, I'm on my way to a hospital. Then he said, no, he'll meet me at the hospital. And I arrived there with my whole family, children, wife, and he arrived there, that's Duduzane, in a Mercedes-Benz, one of these fancy cars. He's a very likable person, and he spoke to me almost like, and he calls me sir, and by then he'd already met Eben, my son, and they would, and it was just like a greeting, meet and greet type of thing. And then he left with the Mercedes, and I went into the hospital. Back to this meeting in August, Chair. So I said to myself,
just to make sure I understand, the meeting that you had with Mr. Duduzane Zuma and his friend, you said was about 2 or 3 days before you were to be interviewed for the position of head of Hawks. No.
No, Chair.
Okay.
This one I'm talking now
about the one you're about to talk about.
Yes, it was.
Is that one?
He was alone then.
Oh, okay. The one where he was with his friend. Around about when was that, more or less? Was that the first one that Mr.
That was the first one where I met him with his white friend, Chair.
Yeah, so that was the first one.
Yeah.
And
the second one?
It was in Gauteng.
In Sandton.
In Sandton, yeah.
The second one was in Pretoria when he came there to
to the hospital.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
And
yes. The first one, let's finish the first one. What appeared to have been the purpose of him wanting to meet with you?
Chair, I don't know. Like I say, he's a very jovial, friendly person. I think maybe he wanted to brag a little bit, I don't know. Show me the offices and a nice car.
Because I mean, if you phone your friend and say, let's meet, there might not need to be any particular purpose. The friends just want to be together for whatever. But if it's somebody that you have never met before, one would think that there would be a purpose why you want to see that person.
Chair, as I said, during that first meeting with him and the white youngster, we went to those offices, and nothing much was said, although he spoke about the investigation that we were busy with. But I just said to him, look, because they were pressurizing, not so much him, it was done by the other chap. His name I've forgotten now. They were putting pressure on myself and the investigating officer, Colonel Botha. And I explained to him, we cannot just go and access documents, we have to subpoena the documents. And then when I met him, but when I met him here in Pretoria, when I met Zani in Pretoria, I don't think the idea was for me to give feedback about the investigation.
Yes.
Because we discussed it, but it wasn't the primary cause of it. Was the discussion on the case was we're busy with it. Colonel Botha is dealing with it.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Then you were on to the third, and then the second encounter. It seems from what you have said that the purpose was not clear either.
Jim,
you were going to hospital, he came, and greeted you, and not much was discussed, and then he left.
And with that discussion, just about my whole family that was present there, we stood there in the car park.
Yes.
Just spoke about the weather and the nice car, and
yes.
And he said he had to go, and I also said, no, I also have to go now because we have to go and see my brother's son.
Yes. Okay. And then now you are into the third one.
Yes, Chair. So
that's the 1, 2 or 3 days before the interview.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
So, Chair, I received a call again that he would like to see me. I said, where Sandton again? Where in Sandton? I can't recall exactly where. So I said once again to my son, Eben, to accompany me, and we drove in his car. Now, on the way there, we put the phone on speakerphone. And then I received a call on a speakerphone which Eben could hear. And asked where we were. I said, no, well, he said, where are you? I said, we're on your way. We should be there in a few minutes. And then we terminated the call, and then my son said to me, now who's that now? But because Zani speaks very private school English, but
how is private school English, Major General Booysen? I'm sure it's not like my English.
And like my English, Chair. So, Chair,
yes.
Then my son said to me, who's that? Who's that? So I said to him, I think it's his white friend talking because of the English, the way he spoke English. And we eventually got to the place we were supposed to meet, and then...
Why did you say that? Was it to test whether your son could distinguish who was speaking based on English or what?
No, Chair, I was confused too then, because I thought maybe because the first time we met the white youngster was with, so I thought maybe this time again the white youngster was with. So maybe that, because it sounded like a white person speaking the English he spoke.
Okay.
And then when I eventually arrived in Sandton, at the spot we were supposed to meet, they weren't there, or he wasn't there. I phoned him, and we kept on missing each other. Eventually I said to my son, I'm hungry now, and there's a burger place around the corner by the Gautrain station. So I said to my son, let's go and have a bite quickly. We went, and as I ordered, he phoned again. And I said, no, we're just having a bite. And this time around he said, meet me at the Gautrain station, at a specific place around the corner. We finished the hamburgers, and my son parked his vehicle. So I thought, let me get out of the vehicle so that they can see me.
Before you continue, General Booysen, with there not being any specific purpose for your previous meetings, why were you inclined to meet with him again?
Chair, as I said in the beginning of my evidence, if you know Duduzane, he's one of those, like he could be your son. Plus, we were doing that investigation in which he was a complainant or a co-complainant with this other gentleman. So I didn't see anything untoward in meeting him at that stage.
Please proceed.
Yes, continue.
So, Chair, I got out of the vehicle and I stood on the pavement so that if they come, they can now see me, because we kept on missing each other. And the next moment, Eben was still in the car. The next moment, I saw a black lady coming from the opposite direction with a child, and I saw this
A black, I'm sorry?
a black lady coming from this side with a
Yes.
small child.
Yeah.
And then the next moment from this side, I saw a Rolls Royce, a black Rolls Royce, pulling up behind Eben's car, my son's car. I thought this car was stopping to pick up this lady, but this lady kept on walking. So I thought, okay. And I bent inside the car and I said to my son, look at this car behind us, because not every day that you see a Rolls Royce. And then when I looked, I saw, no, there's Dudizani sitting in the car. And what I forgot to say, Che, when we were still in the car finding each other, he said to me, are you going to jump in the car with me? I said, no, I'll follow you. And then when I saw it was him, I went to him and I greeted him. Then I decided, no, it's better to drive in the Rolls Royce than my son's Corolla. So I went to my son, I said, no, I'm gonna drive with him. So I jumped in the Rolls Royce, and Eben, my son, followed us in the Toyota. And we went in the direction where the officers were, but then we went past. And I recall during that week there was some comments in the media about the then president again, and I said to him, hey, old man is having a hard time, and he said, yes, and we spoke about the hard time the old man's having. And we carried on driving, and the next moment I saw we were close to the zoo. And then right next to the zoo we pulled up to the gates, and I saw these huge gates, which I'd seen before in the media, and the gates opened, there was a lot of activity of security detail. We drove in, my son drove in with us. I alighted from the vehicle, so did Dudizani. And my son came up to me and he said to me in Afrikaans, Dada, is ek waar ons dink ek is? Dad, are we where I think we are? And I said to him, I think so. We then went to the staircase, Eben was with us. The door was opened. There's a foyer as you enter the door, and we were asked for our phones. We handed our phones over, and we went into a lounge area where I was introduced to Tony Gupta. He introduced himself as Tony Gupta, the person. Chair, the initial talk were, first I spoke to Eben. What do you do? Eben said, no, I'm in the IT industry. And they then said to him, well, if you have any business proposals, don't hesitate to contact us, and spoke about the weather and the importance of schooling, and he ordered some snacks. The people that served us with the snacks, Chair, I'm from KwaZulu-Natal, I know Indian accent, and I've been to India. I know how the Indians in KZN talk and how the Indians in India talk. These people definitely also from India, the people that were bringing the snacks. And they gave us some snacks and some stuff to drink. And then at some point, and this is where things turned funny, that's now Mr. Gupta, raised the issue about me being shortlisted to become the head of the Hawks.
And who was all in the room at that particular point in time?
It was myself, Eben, and Dudizani, and Tony Gupta.
And in which part of the house were you when this was raised now?
You walk upstairs, and then there's this huge door, then there's like a entrance area.
Yes.
And then it goes into it's a huge lounge.
Yes.
A very posh lounge.
Yes. Okay, so it was a lounge.
It was a lounge, Chair.
Okay, yes. So he raised this issue?
Yes, Chair. So I said...
What did he say exactly?
So he said to me, so I understand you might become the head of the Hawks. Chair, very few people knew that I'd been shortlisted for the post. Although there was a newspaper article in KwaZulu-Natal, I think it was in the Mercury, that said Booysen is going for Dramat's job, or something, words to that effect. But over and above that, it was not generally known that I'd been shortlisted for that post. And I said to him, yeah, it's true. And then he said to me, but if you do get appointed, that we should have a supper in KwaZulu-Natal. I did not know what to make of that. If I get appointed, we should have a supper in KwaZulu-Natal. So I just smiled at him and nodded my head. I didn't respond because it was a bit of an uncomfortable situation.
Yes, because on the face of it, it looks like his interest in having supper with you in KwaZulu-Natal would depend on whether you were appointed as head of Hawks or not. If he says, if you get appointed,
Yes, Chair.
let's have supper in KwaZulu-Natal, one would have thought that he would be interested in having supper with you irrespective of your appointment, the outcome of your interview.
Chair, the impression I gained is that he said to me, if I'm appointed, then we should have supper in KZN.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That seems strange that he would want to, or anybody outside of the Hawks, anybody outside of the law enforcement agency should only seek to have a meeting with you or supper with you if you are appointed. You know, I mean, if you meet people, sometimes you feel like, you know, you like these people, maybe you would like to have tea or coffee or lunch with them some other time. You don't make that to depend on anything. You just say, maybe we should have tea or lunch some other time.
Yes, Chair.
So I'm just saying it.
Yes, Chair.
On the face of it, it looks
Yes.
quite strange that was to depend on that.
Yes, Chair. Chair, not anything else was discussed about myself being appointed or not appointed. Zani did not take part in the conversation whatsoever. It was a short discussion. It continued where I think my son liked the juice that they were making, that he had a second cup of the juice. And we decided, well, not decided, it was clear that no, we had said what had to be said. And I then departed. But no promises were made, no undertakings were given.
No pressure of any sort was,
Nothing, Chair.
was put on you to do anything or not
Nothing.
to do anything.
No, Chair.
But again, let's go back to, as you left the meeting, were you clear as to what the purpose of the meeting was
Chair,
What was the purpose of this meeting?
Chair, I suspect that what he was trying to tell me is that should I be appointed, although he did not say that, is that he probably would have had a hand in my appointment and that I might then have been indebted to him. Although it was never said, those were my conclusions that I made.
But the person who had asked for a meeting wasn't Mr. Tony Gupta, it was Mr. Duduzane Zuma, isn't it?
That's correct, Chair.
But am I right in understanding your evidence to be that he asked for a meeting?
You're 100% correct, Chair.
Yes.
I did not initiate the meeting. They phoned me.
Yes. So there were now you had had 3 meetings, so to speak. Some of them might not have lasted, a long time, but each one didn't appear to be clear what the purpose was. Am I right?
You're right, Chair.
Yes.
Although
That one.
the investigation that they were the complainant in
Yeah.
was discussed, but that never seemed to be the...
The reason for the meeting.
Yes, Chair.
Yes. But in the second meeting, even the investigation wasn't mentioned. It was only the first and the third
Yes,
meetings.
the one at the hospital...
Yeah, it was just greeting and,
That's correct, Chair.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Following this encounter, did you have any engagement with Duduzane Zuma again?
After this engagement?
Yes.
Yes, I did, Chair.
Was there any discussion in relation to this meeting that you had at the Gupta residence?
No, Chair.
At the time that you had this meeting, or any time before, for the sake of clarity, were you involved in any investigations in relation to the Gupta family?
No, Chair.
What did you do after having this meeting with Mr. Tony Gupta? Did you take any steps after you had this meeting on the 16th of August 2015?
Chair, okay. Obviously, I went home afterwards with my son Evan. At that point in time, it had become abundantly clear to me that Ntlemetsa was not someone to be trusted. I had to report to him, and I was definitely not going to report such a thing to him. In the meantime, what had happened is the lobby groups had brought in an application to set aside the appointment of General Ntlemetsa for not being fit and proper because of a ruling by, I think it was Judge Elias Motiane, in a severe matter where he said that he had lied under oath and that he lacks integrity. The court ruled in their favor. It was appealed, it went to the SCA, where Ntlemetsa basically lost his case. And I think I've written the date somewhere in my statement, Chair.
And that would be at page 50, paragraph 1.66, where you say that on the 13th of June 2017.
That's true. That's correct, Chair. It's on the 13th of June 2017 at 3:30 the afternoon. I prepared a statement about this meeting that I had at the Gupta compound. And on that particular day, the judgment came out that Ntlemetsa was finally to be removed from the Hawks. The acting head of the Hawks then was General Matakata, Yoli Matakata, and I phoned her and I said to her, I would like to meet her. I left my office in Centurion and she left Pretoria. She was on her way to the airport.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I follow. Pending his appeal or petition to the Supreme Court of Appeal, General Ntlemetsa, was he on suspension or was he at work?
No, he was at work, Chair.
He was at work. When you talk about somebody acting in his position, you mean after he had been removed?
So, Chair, so when the SCA confirmed that he had to be removed,
yes,
he had no more recourse. So,
yes.
And there were a few developments there where the minister actually had to physically go and boot him out of his office, and we left with a car. That was all in the media.
And that was a different minister from...
That was Minister Fikile Mbalula.
Yes, yes.
So, Chair, so I prepared a statement as to what about the meeting. I met General Matakata at what's that place called? At McDonald's.
I'm sorry, Major General Booysen, maybe we should adjourn now. Then when we come back, you can then tell us. I see it is about 1 minute past 1. Okay, we'll take the adjournment, lunch adjournment, and we'll resume at 2.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.
All rise.